As you've probably seen already along the top, we have got four incredibly brilliant speakers. They're absolutely superb. And before we kick off, I'd like to introduce you to Katie, who's already been speaking. She's not only a speaker today, but she's going to host the rest of it. I'll just finish off at the end. Just in brief, Katie is an AI and tech expert who's spent the last 30 years advising most of the world, a lot of the world's biggest brands. She is an author and management consultant whose book about using artificial intelligence in business was published last year and has not only been translated into many languages, but into Chinese too. And I think when you hit the Chinese market, you've probably really got there. So you appear, Katie, on TV and radio on a regular basis, and also Katie advises on an all-party parliamentary committee regarding AI. So may I hand it over to you, please, Katie?
Thanks for that lovely intro, Sylvia. That's fantastic. Just a little bit of housekeeping first off. We will be muting you all to start with, apart from the speakers. As Sylvia said, we've got myself and three incredible speakers to talk to you. So we'll all be speaking for about 7 to 10 minutes. And then you'll have an opportunity, you'll be put into one of two different breakout rooms. So it's a great opportunity because I know how prolific use of Zoom and Teams and those kinds of platforms are at the moment. So it's a great opportunity to trial out these meeting rooms. You'll get the chance in those meeting rooms to go on video, to speak to everybody and to ask some questions. So not only questions to the speakers, but potentially also sharing with that group and getting a bit of feedback about the other people in that meeting room and maybe some of their challenges as well. And then we'll return to the main meeting room and have a final discussion and then let you all get back off to your afternoon. So that's a little bit about the agenda for today. I've got the pleasure of kicking things off by introducing our first speaker today, who is Baroness Morgan of Coates, the Right Honourable Nicky Morgan. Nicky was an MP until last December. She's served in the UK Cabinet, not just once, but twice. She's overseen the education and then the digital, culture, media and sport. Nicky left the Cabinet in February of this year. She's also been a minister in the Treasury and has chaired the really influential House of Commons Treasury Select Committee. Nicky, I'm probably sure you've seen her many times on TV and radio. This week she was on Woman's Hour talking about the lack of female experts, female expert voices, I'll say, in the media during the current COVID-19 pandemic. She's appeared on TVs, joined the team for Have I Got News For You? That was very brave, Nicky. And she's writing for a number of broadsheets and has written a book on character education. So there's some really great topics there that I think you'll find of interest, to ask some questions of her in one of the breakout rooms. So over to you, Nicky, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. And Katie, thank you very much indeed for that introduction. Thank you to Sylvia for bringing us all together. And yes, I'm sure that this audience will be kinder than the Have I Got News For You audience. But that doesn't necessarily mean I expect the questions to be any easier. Now, the whole session was badged under the title, What Will the New Normal Look Like? And I think the phrase new normal is one that we're all using so much more now. And I think we're realising, Sylvia used the phrase unprecedented times, and these are unprecedented times. But there's not going to be just one new normal. We're going to obviously ease ourselves out of the current lockdown to a new normal perhaps at the end of this month and then into June and July. And other speakers are going to cover the challenges around that. Both, I think, in terms of business, but in terms of what it means for changes, but also psychologically as well. I speak on a number of topics, political landscape obviously being one of them, and that covers a number of different things. So, as a flavour at the moment, we've talked a lot, we're listening a lot to coverage of health issues and science issues. But the reason I got involved in politics and the reason I'm still fascinated by it is because actually everything does boil back down to politics. Politics is about the art of people, if you like, and what ministers are having to do at the moment is to take all the health and science advice they're getting and then reformat it into something that we can all understand. And for example, over the next few days, my former colleagues are going to be puzzling about how you move from the messaging of stay at home, which is very simple, to potentially something like stay safe, which of course means lots of different things to lots of different people. And so I think the first big change in the political landscape in this new normal is going to be about government bandwidth. So when I left the cabinet in February, which I have to say feels like a million years ago, I think we all thought that our task for this year was about Brexit and about delivering the manifesto and building on the December general election. It's extraordinary how literally in a matter of weeks, everything the government was focused on has had to completely switch. And I think it's a testament actually to the strength of our civil service and ministers that actually that has happened. There is now a bit more of normal politics or policy creeping back into things. But limited bandwidth means that I suspect Claire's going to talk perhaps a little bit about business rates. So some of the reforms we might have expected to see are just not going to happen in the near future. I think Ben's going to talk a little bit about psychology and resilience and dealing with challenging situations. And one of the things that I think we'll see from the Prime Minister on Sunday is that he's going to be encouraging the nation to find a way to go back to or to adjust to a new normal. And shepherding the nation is something that you don't always expect to do as a minister. And yet that support for all of us is going to be really vital. Now, the second thing, as Katie said, I've served in the Treasury. I chaired the Treasury Select Committee of the House of Commons. Today, we've seen the Bank of England obviously publishing its latest reports. They do make very sobering reading. And for any of you who are running businesses, who employ people, obviously, there's a worry about what the economy is going to look like, just in terms of suppliers and customers. Unpicking those numbers is something I'm very happy to obviously to do. Adjusting to a new level, much higher levels of national debt than anybody anticipated. And of course, businesses themselves will take on significant amounts of debt probably because of the way the government schemes have been structured in order to survive. What's that going to mean for them? Those support schemes are going to have to evolve. And I've written an article actually for tomorrow's Times newspaper on how some of those schemes are going to have to evolve. Sadly, we're going to see rising unemployment, but actually these are not people who have struggled to work. These are people who are in work and expected to carry on being in work. So they're highly skilled in many cases. How do we help them to retrain to find the new normal jobs? And then, of course, there'll be sectors needing support, specific sectors. But of course, we know there are other sectors that have done very well out of this crisis. Tesco and Amazon have been recruiting tens of thousands of people. And if you've managed to adjust to selling online, then actually it may well be that this crisis has provided new business channels you didn't expect. And then the third thing, I'm very conscious when I'm speaking to audiences that people don't want to hear political rants, they don't want to hear partisan politics, but I think a bit of insight into what it's like in the House of Commons, particularly, we're not going to go back to a normal parliament. I'm still given the title, which frankly I still haven't quite got used to. I'm a member of the House of Lords, but Parliament is not going to go back to being normal. You might have seen in the Sunday Times, they were speculating that many members of the House of Lords are aged over 65 or 70, and frankly, just shouldn't be returning to Westminster at all. That'll provide a lively debate. But of course, MPs, if they've got to remain socially distanced, actually only 50 of them can fit in the chamber. Is that tenable for the next year or so? But if you've watched proceedings, and actually it's worth watching some of the virtual proceedings, because as Sylvia said, we're all used to doing things or getting more used to doing things online. Actually, online proceedings in the House of Commons are working remarkably well. And we're doing what we should be doing, which is holding the government to account and asking questions. There's a new opposition leader, an opposition team. Very happy to talk about them. And I think that's going to be a bit of a part of the new normal. And of course, the dreaded Brexit, which I used to give far too many speeches about. It's been lovely not talking about it, but I think it'll come back in roaring form in the next few weeks. So there's lots to talk about. I'm looking forward to hearing from my fellow speakers very much, and then having your questions. But I think the new normal is going to be more virtual online speaking. I'm sure we can all do with lots of tips about how to look presentable in front of the camera. And as Sylvia said, how to make sure, in my case, that my 12-year-old doesn't decide to come in and want to start printing just as I'm in the middle of speaking. So thanks very much.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you very much indeed, Nikki. That's brilliant. I think what you're already seeing, and by the end of this seminar, what you'll, as speaker bookers, realize is having some confidence of the ability of the technology and of the speakers like ourselves to deliver these kinds of sessions virtually. You know, we have no idea. We'll hear more, as Nikki says, on Sunday from the Prime Minister about the return to work and the phasing. We don't yet know exactly what that's going to look like, the confidence that firms will have and SMEs will have. But goes without saying that in the meantime, these kinds of networking events, seminars, all work really, really well virtually. So all of us are, you know, certainly in a position to help you with those kinds of events. So I'm up next. So Sylvia's introduced me, so I don't need to do much more of that. But my job really is to help protect you from extinction. That's a title, that's an opening gamut that I often use. I change it regularly, but really it's something like that. It's some bold statement that I typically use where I'm saying to people, whether you've just graduated, whether you've done an apprenticeship, whether you're old like me, you're 53 and you feel as if you've got reasonably far in your career, forget all of that. You now have to be on a journey of lifelong learning, continuous learning, continuous curiosity. And so, you know, the technology's there and we need to go out there and we need to grasp it. So what I often do when I say things like that is people kind of sit up and listen. Sometimes arms are a little bit crossed, they're confused, they're not really interested in technology, they don't really care. And what I try to do in a non-preaching, in a very authentic and pragmatic and honest and simple way, is show them what are these technologies. So I'm talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning. What we're really saying there is the ability of a machine to imitate intelligent human behavior, and the massive impact that those technologies are going to have on reshaping every single job and every single aspect of society and families over the coming years. And so that's what I often do is do that. And I start by really taking people on my journey. And I usually do this with a couple of slides. So I think I'm the only speaker today who's just going to share with you a couple of slides, literally only 3. And part of what I also talk about is social mobility. I grew up on the 11th floor of this apartment block in Tottenham in North London, famous for my football team, Tottenham Hotspur, but also for riots like Broadwater Farm. Doesn't have very good PR, very ethnic, you know, set of different people, you know, very working class sort of population on the whole. And that's where I grew up. It was a joy to live there. I had support of my family. My family are not well educated, but they were very well read. They gave me love and support. And that gave me the confidence to go on and do well at school and so on. So social mobility sometimes is about giving somebody mentorship and showing people that you believe in them and that you care. And I'm doing those sorts of things at the moment with a few school projects where we're helping disadvantaged children and we're closing that skills gap so that technology, access to technology and amazing things are not only there for people who can afford grammar schools and private schools. Fast forward 50 years, and at the age 50, everything was going over my head. I had a failed business acquisition. It felt as if every man and his wife was all of a sudden a digital marketing expert, and I was being left behind. And so I went away, and without a technical background, I come from an arts, an MBA and a degree in languages, I needed to go away and immerse myself in the world of AI. So I wrote this book on using artificial intelligence. And really it's about saying to people, AI is going to reshape every aspect of what you do, whether you're in retail and you're being able as a retailer to no longer just say, my demographic is female and aged 25 to 40. I can now say, Sylvia, she's this age, she's got twin boys, she comes into my restaurant on a Thursday evening and she orders ribs, but her husband's a vegan. I can do things that are really, really personalized. And so what I try to educate people in my talks is really to show them that whether it's this pandemic God forbid, hopefully not a future one, but there could well be future ones, whether it's AI and the current technology, or whether it's one of these other exciting technologies that are on the runway, as you see there. We all have to be prepared for a future where change is the only given, really. And so what that's about is not worrying so much about the technology, but what it can mean for our lives, what it can mean for our businesses. And I spend my life delivering keynote speeches and working with corporates and with schools and showing them how they can take advantage of these kinds of technology, and the fact that there's massive hype out there and they need to understand what it means. Final slide, and then I'll return back to my full screen. My year of research into the book was fantastic because it gave me access to some of the world's biggest brands, but also hundreds of startups, politicians, regulators. And this scorecard for success is as relevant to someone grappling with blockchain or somebody grappling with how do we face the next pandemic. And it's about mindset. So if you look at number one there, it's about understanding how to be agile and how to have the right mindset. I won't go through all of these. Number 9 is really, really important. It's about what's the bigger picture? What impact is this new technology going to have on our society, on access to it, transparency, ethics, and so on? So they're the kind of areas that I talk about in some of my keynote talks. And I think what we're really saying here is all of us, and I was speaking to a number of business people and educators this morning, we all need to be on a journey of continuous learning. And we all hope, I think, that coming out of this COVID-19 pandemic, that there'll be a new mentality that maybe will have given the planet an opportunity to breathe, and that will start to do things quite differently. So making sense of change, making sense of new technology, living alongside it is really what I try to do in my talks. And to do it not in a preachy way, every single time I deliver one, I'm having to come up with new material. The latest statistics show just how relevant. If I'm talking to a group of lawyers, I need to show them why it's relevant to their journey. Equally, a group of organizations in construction or politicians, whatever it might be, and it touches all of those job functions and all of those industry sectors. So that's what I try to do, is to make it understandable and relatable, and to make people excited about it, because the consensus from my book is that these robots are not coming along to take our jobs. AI has the potential to change the nature of everything we do. It will be incremental, and it's a really exciting opportunity for all of us. If we go out there, we learn, we listen, we hear these kinds of keynote speeches, we read these books, it's a massive opportunity. It's completely changed the way I do business. It's given me new revenue streams, and I'm now looking at book number 2 and a number of other exciting projects that future-proof me for the next decade. So that's my message, to you. You're here as people who book the speakers, and that's the kind of message I share with audiences that I talk to. So hope that's given you, a few insights into what I represent and the kind of work I do. So I now have the pleasure of handing over to Claire Bailey, aka the Retail Champion. Claire is a business owner. She's an independent retail expert, and she's a high street campaigner. She's the person that the media turn to on a regular basis for commentary on those kinds of topics. And she's spent a decade being very vocal on topics such as the need for overhauling the business rates, the relationship between retailers and landlords, asset owners, and also, a bit like I've just outlined, the need to embrace digital technology and enhance those real-world experiences. So in a post-COVID-19 world, Claire's concerns really focus on 2 really important economic issues. So what will happen to commercial property if the occupiers go out of business, and what will happen to global supply chains, especially those linked to the developing economies. So I'm going to hand over to Claire now to take us through some of her nuggets of wisdom.
Well, thank you so very much, Katie, and of course, Nikki before her. I'm just wondering how Ben is going to follow us because I'm already worried. But that was exceptional, and I agree with everything we've already heard. So the two ladies that preceded me, I'd like to take my hats off to you, wonderful people, and of course, Sylvia. And Ben, you know, you're going to have to struggle with this one. But what do I talk about? What do I do? Well, it's always bespoke. I might be turning up to speak to a network of shopping centre owners, or it might be a bunch of independent retailers. It might be a town centre. But what it's always about is, how do we look at the places within which we exist as businesses and as business owners and as shopkeepers and as consumers? And how do we deal with the environment that's presented for us? And at the moment, we're not allowed to go out. We're not allowed to do the things we would normally do. And it's all very, very stressful for everybody, whether you be a business owner or a consumer. So I think what we've got to look forward to, if you can call it that, is a very different world. If you're aware of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, or have ever done any business psychology, we need to start looking at the bottom two layers of the pyramid and saying, actually, this isn't about self-actualization or really particularly enjoying ourselves. It's about staying safe. And the shops and the businesses, as they begin to reopen, and hopefully we'll be hearing on Sunday or Monday, whenever the announcement comes from Boris, what that will look like in terms of relaxing social distancing. What we need to be really thinking about is, how are we going to be safe? How are businesses going to keep us healthy and well? And I think that suddenly the new commodity in the business world is our safety and our well-being. But the two things that Katie linked into there are two things that are really important to me, and two things that are really not being talked about enough, in my opinion. So I think this is going to be something that people need to be hearing about. The first is commercial property. So most of us have pension funds. I would like to assert that most of us have pension funds. Anybody nodding with me? Yeah, so we do. So we all rely on the income from retail property for our commercial pension funds. But there's more than that. We also rely on the income from commercial property at large for our pension funds. And there is this big issue of, we're seeing Debenhams going out of business today. I've done 2 radio interviews already with BBC West Midlands and BBC Essex about Debenhams closing down. What does that mean? It doesn't just mean a significant level of employment in the area. It means that massive amount of retail property will now be unoccupied. So the landlord, or whoever it is that owns it, the asset manager, they have to pay the business rates back to the government, as Nikki will assert with me. That's a matter for contention. So what else happens after that? There will be a lack of income going into something. If it's a private individual, we might all agree that that's not necessarily something we really particularly care about. But if it's a commercial pension fund, we have to then consider, what's the knock-on effect? So all of this talk around repurposing retail property, moving commercial property into some other type of use class, as they call it, that's a conversation that needs to be had. And then we need to also look at, well, even if that property is repurposed, to what? Was talking about a zombie apocalypse, sorry, a zombie, I can't even say it. You know what I mean? An experience that the businesses that own that property, they earn more money from retail than they do from other like uses. So we need to keep commercial property in active use, and then look at every one of us is able to work online. What does that mean to offices? Does that mean that offices, HQs and whatnot, will they still be required? So I'm having lots of conversations with people independently of this about what does that mean to the commercial property, and then switch away from that and go to global supply chains, because I'm conscious of time. It was on the BBC, I believe, on Monday, that retail manufacturers in Bangladesh it's actually a rather tragic story, and I'm sorry if this sounds very, very, very downbeat, but there are people out there who are saying that the deaths from COVID-19 are not just going to be related to the people that actually died from the virus. There will be people in developing economies who may suffer mass starvation in their economies. The Bangladeshi manufacturing is just one of the global economies affected by this. £2.4 billion worth of textiles orders were cancelled by British retailers in the last few weeks. And these are the kind of things that need to be surfaced. We are not talking about who will be there to service our supply chains in the future. If we allow our supply chains to fail as a result of our retailers taking a short-term view and not supporting those global manufacturers, who will be there in future to support the Primarks of this world, or the Boohoo's, or the ASOS's? Because if we aren't there now as British businesses to support our manufacturers, who is going to be there? Because they will not have anybody left to work for them. They will either have, unfortunately, and if you watch the BBC feature, it's very, very hard hitting. They will either have struggled with the economic crisis of mass starvation, or they'll have gone and worked for somebody else. And if our British businesses are not willing to support their global manufacturers, what's going to be left for us when we want to buy fast fashion? And is fast fashion even going to be relevant in the new economy? So there's so many questions that are going unanswered, and I don't have the answers, but I do have the concerns. And I think that these are the kind of things that in the immediate term I'd like to be talking about. I know it doesn't make for buoyant hearing, it's not joyful, it's not as exciting as artificial intelligence or anything else, but looking at the thing about business rates, sorry, I must give due notice to Nikki and business rates. Business rates, we've been talking for over 10 years about business rates. Myself, Mary Porteous, Bill Grimsey, you name it. We've all been banging on about business rates. Cameron and Clegg put in the Porteous review. Grimsey came back with an argument about it. The fact of the matter is they do not make sense for modern businesses. It's just one of the many political structures and taxations that need to be reviewed. And perhaps when we come out of this, and as Nikki alluded to, the government are spending at an alarming speed to support businesses like mine and many others. Perhaps when we come out of this, we will all need to be looking at what do these taxation structures look like? And that's the kind of thing that I'd like to be talking about. So commercial property, retail global supply chains, business rates, and anything else you want to throw at me. Back to you, Katie.
Fantastic, Claire. Very
Did
thought-provoking.
I stick to time?
Yes, you did. Well done. So yeah, really thought-provoking. So I'm now going to introduce our final speaker before we then have the chance to go into breakout rooms and get some direct access to them. So this is retired Royal Marine Ben McBean, incredibly courageous and humble man. Ben has absolutely been through experiences that we can't even begin to imagine. Horrific injuries from stepping on an IED in Afghanistan, which has left him minus his right leg and his left arm. But astonishingly, as you'll hear in a moment, Ben doesn't let these injuries define him. He's massively inspiring and motivating, and peppers all his speeches with humorous anecdotes, and really leaves his audiences feeling moved and uplifted. So I'm really looking forward to hearing to Ben. I'm sure you are too. So over to you, Ben.
Hi, everyone. It's great to have everyone speak, by the way. Hi, everyone who's watching. Hope you're staying safe. So yeah, my speeches are just about what I went through back in 2008. So I left school and I wanted to be a Royal Marines Commando. I found that picture a couple of days ago. I think I was 18 then, I think. So yeah, I was absolutely buzzing. Got in, I think it was like 60 or 70 of us who started training, and only 11 originals got through after like 32 weeks. So yeah, I was over the moon when I got in. It's always what I wanted to do since I was literally like a kid. So yeah, I got in, fit, strong, healthy, wasn't afraid of anything. It's probably the only time I was like carefree, just really nothing fazed me. Going to war, I knew I was going to Afghanistan at the time, didn't bother me at all. All the lads were exactly the same. And yeah, I was in Afghanistan probably like 3.5, 4 months into a 6-month tour. Woke up one day, can't remember, I didn't have a dream. I just had, as soon as I woke up, my own voice, like, not in a crazy way, just said calmly, like, you're going to get killed today, or like really badly injured. And I was, you know, what do you do? So I just shook my friend's hands and stuff, and I was like, oh mate, just shut up and get ready. And I was like, oh, I'll see you on the other side and everything. And yeah, went out on this patrol, and you know, it's just a weird feeling, but I don't know, it's probably nothing. So yeah, went out on this patrol. A couple of hours later, we were running towards a compound, and there was a guy in front of me, then there's me, and there's a guy behind me. And I just heard a thud, not what you see in films, big loud bangs, and my ears weren't ringing or anything like that, just a thud. And when I woke up on the floor, my right leg was gone. So my whole shin bone was sticking out with no foot on the end. And my left arm was just in bits. So yeah, I knew my leg was gone. My right leg was gone. My left arm was pretty much just hanging off, I suppose. Had like shrapnel wounds in my forearm, just bits of flesh everywhere. And I was just like, this can't be real. So yeah, I just tried to sleep it off. I thought it was a dream. I was hoping it was a dream. But then the pain starts kicking in, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I just, you know, realised I wasn't obviously dying. I could still hear people around. I was in more and more pain. And then eventually I just decided to just get my backside in gear, really. So just start crawling around and try and sort myself out. And after a while, eventually I was rescued. The guys tripped me in the back of a trailer, which is our version of an ambulance. And I got taken back to Camp Bastion, where they chopped my arm off. So as you can see here, that's the scar where they tried to like save it. But yeah, they chopped my arm off, and yeah, they sent me back to the UK. I flew back to Prince Harry. Also, I didn't know, I didn't really care, so I was just been blown up. So yeah, I woke up in Selleck Hospital in Birmingham. I knew my leg was gone, but I thought they was going to save my arm. But when I woke up, the bandage was so big, and I have a thing called phantom limb pain, so I can still move all my fingers even though my hand's not there. So I thought for about 2 weeks my arm was there. And then obviously when they was bringing the bandage higher and higher up, I clicked on that my arm was gone. So I didn't really mind losing the leg, weirdly, but the arm, that really kind of like got to me. So me, my dad and my uncle, you know, I felt just crap, I suppose. So we just cried for about 10 minutes. And then I was moved to like a burns and plastics unit. And I just basically one day stopped living every day based upon how I felt, because I felt pretty crap, which meant I was always just going to sit there. So rather than just work out how I feel, I was just going to, you know, whatever I want to do, just get my ass out of bed and do it, basically. So the first thing I saw on TV when I turned it on was the London Marathon. I had no limbs yet or anything, but I just thought, oh, I'll do that next year. So then I just, rather than wake up feeling in pain, feeling tired, feeling this, forget how I feel. I'm just going to go out there and do it. So I got moved to Headley Court pretty quick. They gave me a walking leg. Started walking within a couple of hours. Pretty sore, but I could do it. I then was given a prosthetic arm. So believe it or not, the first arm they gave me was a white one. And I had to wear that for about a year. So I just wear like a leather glove over it. And then eventually I went back and I was like, oh, can I have a black one, please? And I was like, oh, yeah, man, I just didn't think. Sorry, mate. I was like, yeah, no worries. So then I got this black arm. And then eventually over time, so this is my real hand. So it kind of looks like that. And then this is my prosthetic one, which looks kind of realistic, don't you think? So it just pops on. I'll just like literally just stuff it into there. It pops on. It doesn't do anything. And that's my arm. So I had my arm, had a leg. And then the marathon came up. So I had a running leg built, and I just didn't do any training. I ran down a grass bank, which was like 20, 30 meters, and then fell over at the end of it. And that was my training. So the idea was either start with skin, finish with no skin on my stump, or train and start with no skin and it gets even worse. So I just didn't train. So I just turned up on the day and I just ran. And then it took me, I think, it was 6 hours and 20 minutes, but I still did it. And everyone said I couldn't do it at the time. So I was pretty chuffed with that. And then just over time, I did it next year again. And, you know, been to the Himalayas and things like that. And yeah, my story's just kind of, it's not showing off with what I've done since my injury, I suppose, but it's just to kind of say that, you know, life goes on. And obviously with COVID going on at the minute, everyone's kind of, this is a massive setback, but it's how we react to this setback, you know, rather than just sitting at home thinking about how you feel, which is probably crap, to be honest, because you're all on lockdown. It's just trying to think about what you can do. You know, when lockdown's over, you know, get yourself a plan ready, so when lockdown is over, we can kind of smash it and achieve these goals that we've set ourselves. You know, as I said, I've heard speakers speak before, and they talk about how you feel and it feels right, blah, blah, blah. You know, it feels right if you probably live in Miami and it's a nice sunny day and your bills are paid and stuff, and your 1 hour's exercise is on the beach. But, you know, it's hard for most people because we don't live under those circumstances. So, you know, I think the thing that holds us all back is, as I say, it's how we feel opposed to what we can actually achieve. I don't feel great 9 times out of 10 with my leg, my arm, mentally as well. That can kind of get to me. But as long as I have a goal and I go out there and, you know, just try and achieve it, then I think that's the main thing. So, you know, don't worry about how you feel. You know, so the reason why most people are successful is because they don't give up on themselves too easy. And I think everyone needs to remember that. So on lockdown, you know, you are stronger than what you think. Just get your mindset right, start preparing for when lockdown's over. And as soon as you can open those doors again and get out there and just achieve whatever it is you can achieve, because I've been through a hell of a lot and I'm officially disabled, but it doesn't hold me back in any way, shape or form, just because I don't let it. So, you know, just bear that in mind yourselves. So anyway, that's what I talk about. Wish you all the best of luck, and hopefully just stay safe.
Ben, I've got goosebumps listening to that. I'm sure everybody else has as well. Absolutely amazing. And, you know, as your bio said, and this is the first time I've heard you, you know, the humility, you know, just how humble, that's amazing. And that's such a powerful message, as you say now, for any time in people's careers, you know, whether they've lost a child, whether they've lost a business, whether they've gone bankrupt, whether they've lost a family member or their business due to COVID or future changes. That's just so reassuring. And brave and powerful. And as you say, I love the not being, you know, defined by that and not worrying so much about how you feel. And I think, you know, with social media and all these support books and, you know, well-being and everything is just obviously incredibly important. But your message really resonates there of action. You know, we all feel down, and you have to, you know, put those things aside and plan and get off your backside and, you know, make it happen. And it's really,
Exactly.
really, really inspiring. So thank you very much for that.
Pleasure.
So what we're going to do now is my colleague Ashley is going to split us all up into 2 separate breakout rooms. So in the next few moments, you are going to see a request and it will say join breakout room 1 or join breakout room 2. When you're in those breakout rooms, you'll have the opportunity to go on video if you can, and to be unmuted and to ask questions. Nikki and I will be in one of the rooms, and Claire and Ben and Sylvia will be in the other room. And you'll have a chance, you know, to ask questions of the speakers, but more than that, we learn from one another all the time. So you might want to share a similar story, your biggest challenge, or maybe a specific question, you know, to one of the speakers. So that's what we'll do. We'll do that for about 15 minutes till just before 3 o'clock. And then we'll return and you'll see a message come up, a broadcast message that says return to the breakout room. All you literally got to do is click on that. We'll return to where we are now, and then there might be some final comments and questions, and then we'll let you all get back to your afternoon. So look forward to seeing some of you in the breakout room shortly. Thank you very much so far to all the speakers and to Sylvia.